Jan Michael Greenberg.
Sandy Kravitz.
Allison Beckham.
And Patty Beckman. Barbara.
So moved.
Okay, Board Member Greenberg makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. I move to convene to executive session pursuant to ARS 38-431.03 and 3. The board may vote to convene in executive session, which will not be open to the public, for discussion or consultation for legal advice with the governing board's attorney or an item or items that are listed on the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. We are now convened in executive session. All right, you guys, we're on. Okay, I move to adjourn our executive session. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. The executive session is adjourned. Our special meeting is reconvened at 5:03 p.m. And now I move to adjourn our special meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Our special session is adjourned. Okay. Moving forward now to our regular meeting. Let's pull this up here. Sorry, one moment. I don't know where that went. Okay. I call to order this regular meeting of the Scottsdale Unified School District. It is December 17th, and the time is 5:04 p.m. Please stand. Board Member Beckham, will you lead us in the pledge? We will have a roll call starting from my far right.
Jan Michael Greenberg.
Sandy Kravitz.
Allison Beckham.
And Patty Beckman. 4 board members are present. Board member Barbara Perleberg is absent, but we do have a quorum. Do any board members have any changes to the agenda? No? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Board member Kravitz moves to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board member Greenberg seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The agenda is approved 4-0. We now call on Dr. Creekard to present our student and staff recognitions and celebrations.
Thank you, President Beckman, members of the board. We have wonderful celebrations of student and teacher accomplishments to share with you today. We're going to mix up the order a bit this afternoon to accommodate our high school friends who have final exams starting tomorrow. Not that they would leave their studying till the end, but we'll make sure that they get home in time. First up is our District Athletic Director, Mr. Nathan Slater, who is here to tell us about some recent outstanding achievements by high school teams. Mr. Slater.
President Beckman, Governing Board, Dr. Creekard, and Saunders, thank you. We have 2 amazing celebrations for you tonight. The first one is going to be the Chaparral Palm and Cheer team in the Spirit Line competition that they won. Congratulations to these girls. They're going to be joined by their coach, Dorothy Brown and Kelsey Tomlinson. Coach Tomlinson, Coach Brown, come on up if you would too, please. Congratulations, coaches. In August, coaches Dorothy Brown and Kelsey Tomlinson decided to have the Chaparral Palm and Cheer teams compete for the first time as a Spirit Line at the AIA Game Day competition. They pulled their varsity teams together and choreographed a game day performance for their 40 athletes. The performance included a band dance, sideline cheer, crowd-raising cheer, and the fight song. The teams came together with the support of their football program and won a qualifying event on November 2nd at Shadow Mountain High School with a near-perfect score of 49 out of 50. That score qualified them for state, and on December 7th, the Chaparral Spirit Line took the field at ASU Sun Devil Stadium to compete for a state championship. The girls put on an amazing performance and walked away with that state championship, beating their nearest competitor by over 3 points. The girls represented their school, their community, and our school district with sportsmanship, respect, and character, which is the pillars of the athletics here in Scottsdale, and we are so super proud. Congratulations to the Chaparral Spirit Line Palm and Cheer teams for their state championships. Congratulations, girls. Also, this year, as you all know, SUSD has introduced Excellence Recognition Coins to honor the dedicated people who engage SUSD and the communities to provide our families with rewarding experiences. On behalf of the Scottsdale Unified School District Athletics Departments and the Superintendent, we'd like to honor Coach Tomlinson and Coach Brown with one of these recognition coins. Congratulations, coaches, on the job well done. All right, congratulations, ladies. If you go right through there, we'll get some pictures. All right, our second recognition tonight will be our Saguaro football team. And if we could have Principal Ann Oxinger, Athletic Director Brandon Johnston, and Head Football Coach Jason Mons, as well as their team captains, come on up. Everybody but Keely. Everybody but Keely. Well, special congratulations to the Saguaro football team. They made the state championship game in the open division in football this year. And based on the fact that that Saguaro has had 11 state championships since 2006, the state of Arizona decided to alter the way in which we qualify teams for state by the creation of an open division. And the open division takes the best schools out of the 4A conference, the 5A conference, and the 6A conference. And in order to qualify, you have to be a top dog in the state of Arizona, which Saguaro obviously is. The reason for this was to try to put the best teams on the field at the same time and also to have some relevancy to the 4, 5, and 6As. And Saguaro High School qualified for that state championship. They were the smallest public school to qualify for that state championship at about 1,300 students. They beat a 5A school in Horizon. They beat 6A Hamilton, who has over 4,000 students. And they also played 6A Chandler, who was ranked nationally in the top 25. The open division was ranked by Max Preps, which is arguably the most predictive measure of athletics in football in Arizona. Had this tournament, the open division, ranked the 11th most difficult state championship in the nation. Saguaro is the envy of the state. And I think that's partially why the membership, the AI, decided to go with the Open Division Championship. They did Saguaro football. They spent 3 weeks in the USA Today's top 25 nationally. But as we talk about final exams, they also have 37 players in the program with a 3.0 or higher GPA. There we go. They also have 23 players in the program with a GPA of higher than 3.5. And they also have 10 players in the program with a GPA of 4.0 or higher, which is a testament to those players. Coach Mons, you've been doing this for a long time. We're really super proud of the program that you've created and the things that you guys are accomplishing. It's truly a special feat for a school of 1,300 to continue the success and the excellence that you guys, and thank you for bringing your team captains. So Tyler Beverett, if you could step forward too, buddy, and wave to everybody. Tyler, congratulations. Will Schaefer. Connor Tosi. And Danny Rivera. And one of the more amazing statistics is that in the program there are now 20 players that have Division I scholarship offers in football, which is amazing. So, on behalf of SUSD and our athletic program, we want to thank you guys for your excellence and your continued drive to make us look good and yourselves, and congratulations for doing everything with a high degree of sportsmanship, respect, and character. And we also have coins for the team captains and also for you, Coach Mons, and congratulations on a job well done.
Thank you, Mr. Slater, and congratulations to these fine young people. As I mentioned this last month, you may remember seeing that on social media we advertised that Mojave Middle School hosted the first LEGO League robotics tournament this past weekend. Normally, Dr. Sackos, our Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education, would be the one to introduce the students for this very successful effort, but she is unable to be with us tonight. So instead, I'm going to introduce you to Mojave Middle School 7th grade science teacher, Mr. Bert DeVelde, sponsor of the Mojave Robotics Club. Mr. DeVelde, you're up.
Thank you, Madam President, board members, Dr. Creekart, Mrs. Como. It's an honor to play that role. I try to do the best. I will also no, I will not. I was going to stall a bit because I was hoping for a speaker, but she walks in right now. So a few years ago, we had the start of the season at Mojave for our robotics club, and we have a parent meeting. And during the parent meeting, after we introduced the program, we asked the kids that were coming there if there were any questions. And this very timid boy raises his hand, and completely overwhelmed by clearly his life's anxieties, he asked the question, "Does the robot ever break?" And at the same moment, almost, one of my former students that was in the program the year before jumps up and says, "Yes! And that's the best part." This is a true story, and I think it's the best story to tell to capture what robotics is really about. What it does is open up the world, including everything that goes wrong, things that you didn't plan, things that fail, and then find a group of people to solve it in your best possible way. I say a group of people. That's what robotics is, and that's one of the reasons that I'm passionate about it. I'm very honored to work with some very fine people. I'm here to introduce two of them. You said that Mojave was hosting the tournament, and this is true. It was on the premises of Mojave. But now for the 6th year, it's actually organized by the students of Saguaro. The SaberCat robotics program is completely organizing the whole thing, to the point where I made a few calls and tried to intervene, and I was basically taken to task by one of the leaders of the program, who sat me down and explained to me that what I did was maybe not the best decision. So next year it's going to be different. And that, I think, is the best introduction to two fine ladies who are sitting right here. Kaylee Battelle, who was the tournament director this year, and Natalie Foster, who was shadowing her to be the tournament director next year. So without further ado, I'd like them to speak about their program and their experiences. Thank you.
Hello again to you, the board, and thank you so much for having us. My name is Kaylee Battelle, and I'm a senior at Saguaro High School, as you probably know, and I directed the Mojave Middle School Scottsdale FLL qualifier this year.
Hello, my name is Natalie Foster, and I am training to take over orchestrating this event next year and for the next 2 years.
Today we'll be talking to you about this Saturday's FLL qualifier. Since last year's qualifier, which was the biggest in the state, and the year before that, which was also the biggest in the state, on top of Sisters in STEM, which we also organize, we have sent endless emails, coordinated facilities, including food, tables, robots, bringing back sometimes from college volunteers, publicizing, mentoring the teams themselves, answering questions, and ultimately helping these kids have a wonderful time in the tournament. So, our team does anything in this tournament from actually organizing the event, which on Saturday we hosted at Mojave Middle School 32 of the state's teams, including many from SUSD, which much of the time we have actually mentored ourselves. Just like robotics is supporting younger people, it reaches through all sorts of the grades, such as Natalie Foster here, who was actually mentored by our team before she joined FRC SaberCat Robotics in order to take over the event. So if you want to talk about that, Natalie.
So like I said, I'm being trained to take over coordinating this event next year. And I was an FLO student when I was in elementary school. I had done it, and it was the thing that really pushed me into the STEM fields. I didn't know anything about them up until robotics, and it has been if I really trace it back, the main source of why I want to go into a STEM career now, going into college in the next 2 years. And what FLL did for me was show me all of these amazing things that I can do, and it provided a platform where I could grow this love for STEM that I already had and really learn. So Saguaro mentors had been mentoring my team at Mojave and at Navajo Elementary School, which is where I attended. And now I'm going back and mentoring those same students at Navajo with their robotics team. And it's so gratifying knowing that I can give back. I've come full circle from receiving that mentoring now to giving it and being able to give this to hundreds of kids. There were around 200 kids at our qualifier this past weekend. And coming into that is just showing how much this program is really growing. Mojave has a record of 70 kids in their robotics program right now, which is just an amazing number that we get to hear. And there's no words to really describe how happy it makes me to know that I'm able to give back to these students what I love so much.
Right. So one thing I'd like to mention is that not only is the Scottsdale qualifier one of the only ones organized by students, but it is also the only one in which the tournament director is also the volunteer coordinator. So it provides an incredible opportunity for our robotics team to step up and help these students compete in a fun manner, enjoy themselves. I mean, if you guys had seen it, it was fabulous watching these kids running around and breaking things and fixing things and learning things. And I think I can say with all honesty at the very end, watching them do the Macarena, I don't think that there was a better way for us to encourage a STEM education than supporting these students at Mojave Middle School. Being on our robotics team at Saguaro and being able to organize these events from Sisters in STEM to the FLL qualifier has set all of us up for our futures in STEM. In fact, I recently got accepted to Tufts University, and I could not have I could not have done that. I could not have done that if it weren't for the for the support of the opportunities that we are given to lead. So I would like to thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to talk to you about this incredible event, and I hope that we continue to make it better and better every year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great job, guys.
So a little bit.
Thank you.
A little bit more, if I may, about Kaylee and Natalie. And I'll go back to Barrett, but Kaylee and Natalie are also both members of the Superintendent's Advisory Group. Kaylee being the president of that group, busy young lady. And by the way, Natalie just happens to be board member Perleberg's niece. So, Barrett.
And if I may add one thing that the lady so graciously omitted, their season is about to start. So FRC is about to start their building season. When is the kickoff? January 4th. There you go. They will have 6 weeks, only 6 weeks to build a complete robot, and they don't even know right now what it's going to do. So if you want to be part of that, listen to the announcements. I'm sure they will be fed to you as well. So this is a program that we say every child deserves to see. Every child deserves to have an opportunity to basically be confronted with failure. And every child has an opportunity to deal with it and find a way to do that. That's what robotics does. So a few months ago, we got an email from a school that was struggling. A Jewish school, the Pardes school, said, you know, we would love to compete, but guess what? All these tournaments are on Saturday. Can you do something for us? So we got together and said, well, we're setting up on Friday. Would it be possible before sundown that we set something up? We set up the boards, we set up the robots, we set up the judging room so that the school can come and visit. And that's exactly what happened on Friday before the tournament started. So that's now another part of the inclusiveness of the program. And I'm very proud to introduce Mrs. Susan Finks from the Pardes School, who came over here today to speak about her experiences last week. Mrs. Finks.
Hi, I'm Susan Finks, and I'm the Lego League robotics coach for Pardes Jewish Day School, and we're a K-8 here in Scottsdale. Many of our graduates go to the Scottsdale high schools. being a Jewish school, we cannot compete on Saturday because that's our Sabbath. And as Bert said, all the Lego competitions are on Saturday. So last Friday, I took my team to compete at Mojave Middle School, and I'd like to thank Bert and Kaylee, as well as the judges that were from Saguaro High School, for making our participation completely possible and inclusive. They went out of their way on a Friday afternoon, and I know high school students have other things to do the weekend before finals, on a Friday afternoon, to make sure that we could participate. Everybody we spoke to was so warm and so welcoming and kind. And I'd also like to thank tournament official Eleni Olsane, a Saguaro graduate, for telling us that we have a place to come year after year. I have never felt so appreciated and accepted anywhere, and I know the kids and their parents who were watching the robotics portion felt it too. So Bert, Kaylee, and Eleni invited us to invite other Jewish schools to come, which there are about 4, and we will do so. I'm excited to have that possibility, and I'm sure they will be excited to be included as well. So we're excited about participating next year, and I'm thrilled to have made new friends here in the Scottsdale Unified School District. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to the Saguaro Robotics team and for Mojave for putting on another great event. Thanks for embodying the first Lego League core values and accommodating our friends from Padre School. The best, Pardis schools, excuse me. And best wishes to the teams that qualified for the state championship at ASU the weekend of January 18th. Now we have some state award-winning physical education teachers to tell you about. PE is one of the several hats worn by Mrs. Michelle Irvin. Mrs. Irvin.
Thank you. It's my great honor to be up here again this month, last month with my fine arts hat, and this month with my physical education. It brings it to forefront when you see these high school athletes doing so well that spark started when they were in elementary school. And we have the great honor to have 3 elementary physical education teachers who brought home awards at the Arizona Health and Physical Education Conference last month. So I'd like to invite them up, and we're going to speak about them. Angela Caruso and Kyle Bragg and Julie Sparks. Can you come up? And then can I also have their principals come up, please, from Anasazi, Desert Canyon Elementary School, and Cochise Elementary. I'll also be bringing Marge up. The first person we're going to talk about is Angela Caruso, who won the Adaptive PE Teacher for the state of Arizona.
Good evening, and I'm honored to say a few words about Angela as well as Adaptive PE on behalf of the Special Education Department. For many of us, PE can be a welcome break to the academic routine. For some of us, it might be where we got a chance to excel that wasn't in the classroom. But nevertheless, for some students, it isn't quite that opportunity because they don't have access to physical education classes the same way that other students might. So here comes superheroes like Angela, who provide adaptations and modifications to the general education, physical education curriculum. She's done an outstanding job with our students. She makes it fun. She's a special educator at heart who came out of the special education classroom just to be into the world of adaptive PE for our students. So like Michelle said, it starts young and it carries its way all the way up and through high school. For many of our students do need that for physical accommodations or intellectual accommodations sometimes. So she does great things like either going into general education classes and working with the PE teacher there on adapting the curriculum, or if students can't do that, then also creating motor rooms at Cochise and other places where the students can engage in physical activity. So we are beyond proud and pleased to share this award with Michelle.
So I just want to congratulate Angie on this well-deserved award. We'd be here all evening if I shared with you everything that she does to impact students and staff in Scottsdale. But the one thing that stands out the most to me, and I know my staff at our school, is her positive attitude, enthusiasm, and just energy for her and passion for her job, and we know what she does with kids every day. So on behalf of Cochise, we'd like to present you with the challenge coin.
All right, so the next person I'll be talking about is Kyle Bragg. Kyle Bragg won the Innovation Award. This award was created to recognize teachers using technology, techniques, and public relations and latest fitness trends to inspire all children. As I read a little bit about Kyle Bragg, as you know, I've lived in the fine arts world, so I have completely had my life turned around by these fabulous physical education teachers in Scottsdale. I'm so impressed with their energy and the things they do, and particularly in Kyle Bragg, who was the 2018 Arizona Elementary PE Teacher of the Year. He's nationally board certified. He seeks to improve daily by reflecting on practice. He's using, I don't even know what all of these things are, incorporating technology such as Plickers, and he has GIFs and iPad applications that he's going to be working with our physical education teachers in our PD in January, teaching them how to use technology in their classrooms, which they're all very excited about. So I am very honored to have someone like Kyle Bragg working in our school district, and thank you so much.
And it seems like a year ago we were just celebrating you, Mr. Bragg, because we were. But it's very exciting that our profession has educators like Mr. Bragg who really implement and just demonstrate our core values every day. I have to say, in his class, he is doing just cutting edge practices, best practices for all students. And it doesn't matter if it's, in a PE classroom, he's going above and beyond. He's teaching every staff member how they can implement just new practices for all of our students to make sure that they have access to the curriculum and they're doing their best. But I can't say enough. I could be here all day, but he really is a core of our community at Anasazi. He knows every child's name. He knows all about all the families. You ask anybody, it's all about Mr. Bragg. He's the celebrity at our school and the backbone. And it's just such a joy and a pleasure to be able to come to work every day knowing that there are educators there doing what's best for kids every day and there for the right reasons. And so, Mr. Bragg, with that being said, on the behalf of Anasazi, we want to present to you the challenge coin.
And as we had the Teacher of the Year last year, we have the Teacher of the Year this year as well. Julie Sparks, who's in her 25th year of teaching, 23 here in Scottsdale. I've only just gotten to know her mostly through the internet. She sent me some lesson plans to share with other teachers and a website, which I perused for multiple hours. You should see the incredible things that this woman is doing. So it's no surprise that she was chosen for her work with parents and students, and how her range of skills, knowing her sports, all the different activities and events that she has going. So it's such a great honor to have another Teacher of the Year in Scottsdale Unified for elementary. So very fantastic. Thank you, Julie.
Julie has makes a huge impact at our school, and I would say one thing I learned about Julie is she's a leader and she collaborates with all the other PE teachers. When I first was there last year, one of the questions she asked me at an early release is, do you mind if I'm not at your early release? Because I'd really like to collaborate with my PE teachers. And I'm like, of course. So she's a fabulous leader. And also when she puts on events at our school, they're above and beyond. I was so amazed with her turkey trot. It's not just a turkey trot in a circle. It's a turkey trot with an obstacle course on the outside. So the students have a choice of you can run in a circle or choose an obstacle course. And that's Julie. She's just goes above and beyond. She's in charge of our Stugo at our school, and she's also a national board certified teacher. And again, I could go on and on about Julie, but she's also the core of our school too. So Julie, I'd also like to present with you the challenge coin. So congratulations.
Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, and congratulations, teachers. Congratulations. Thank you for what you do. So that's the end of the celebrations, but our Chief Systems Officer, Debbie Spalding, is here to tell us about a recent student video project. Ms. Spalding.
Good evening, President Beckman, members of the board, Dr. Creekard and Sandra. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I bring with me 2 students from Saguaro that are in the video class there. And this is Ripley Mason and Elizabeth Stevens. And Ripley is going to introduce the video and what we did.
Good evening.
Okay. Let her come over here, Susan.
Come here, Liz.
Stand by yourself.
So this is Liz. She's my best friend. And we worked together to direct this film. It took a very long time to get this final product. We worked so hard, and I'm honestly just really proud to call it our own, because we've worked for this. And I'm really proud that we get to show this to you, because I didn't think that we were going to get this far. I thought, they're going to be like, it's a kid's film. But it's something, at least that I feel like, is going to be impactful, at least for the teachers and the parents in this room right now. You'll be able to understand what the schools are trying to accomplish with the Chromebook, and I'm really proud that the video what we have.
When it came to doing this project, I was like really excited for the opportunity, and I just saw like how much this was really going to be like a game changer when it came to my film and TV class, because like we were told a lot of opportunities were going to come our way, and I just didn't think it was going to be like how in my senior year that this was going to happen. And I'm just really happy that I get to show this film to you guys, and that all that hard work is really paying off, and we get to show you guys our film, and I hope you guys enjoy it as much as we enjoyed making it. And that's really it.
And with that, would you guys roll the film?
In my classroom, my students use them to access like simulations that are available online, as well as to use Google Classroom, which helps us to just manage the student submission of like digital, like the things that they do online in class.
When we first started flipping it over and started seeing that we had new types of Chromebooks, what was your initial reaction to that?
Yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool to be able to like do the touch screen things, and I don't know, it was something different in the classroom, which was really nice as well.
New Chromebooks are amazing. Faster internet, faster speed, get the work done quick. High school approved.
Yeah, we are in the place to be.
thanks to these wonderful students for coming up here. There were other students that worked on the video with them as well, Torik Ball and Hayden Skeggs, but these were all from Mr. McCandless's class at Saguaro. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. Now on superintendent's comments, if I may move on.
Yes.
Two great pieces of news this afternoon. First is that Coronado High School has been selected as one of 5 high schools in the state to receive Arizona's Gear Up 5E school grant administered by Northern Arizona University. 5E stands for Engage, Empower, Excel, Elevate, and Enrich. The grant will run from 2019 to 2026 and has the potential to impact the entire Coronado learning community. We don't know the exact amount yet, but I can tell you it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for 7 years. Gear Up stands for Gaining Early Awareness and Readiness for Undergraduate Programs. Gear Up is part of a state and national effort to increase educational success statewide and is designed to increase the number of low-income students who are prepared to not only enter but succeed in post-secondary education. The fine details of the partnership between Coronado and NAU have yet to be worked out. NAU officials will be here next month to start developing it with Principal Palatucci and her staff. However, we foresee that the grant will provide funding for targeted support of students, working backward from senior year to support their academic success, improve attendance, and increase Coronado's graduation rate. The second news that I have to share with you is that the State Board of Education will provide Tonalea K-8 and Coronado High School with funding to add full-time social worker to their staffs. Last season, the Arizona Legislature approved expanding the state's school safety program, allocating $20 million for new funding for school counselors, social workers, and school resource officers. The program is administered through the Arizona Department of Education and State School Superintendent Kathy Hoffman's office. SUSD submitted applications on behalf of each of our schools. Actually, each of the schools worked on their applications with us. 931 applications were sent in by 284 school districts and charter schools around Arizona, requesting more than $95 million for those people, school counselors, social workers, and SROs, while there was only $20 million in funding and $32 million total in funding available. $95 million was asked for. That's the need in the state through this, with only $32 million available. We are most grateful to receive 2 of those grants, 2 of the 118 schools, 2 of the 118 school personnel who will be hired with this grant money. We encourage the legislature and Governor Ducey to continue addressing the safety and social wellness of our students as a top priority. Lastly, I would just like to say how proud I am of the work that is being done in all of our schools by our students and by our teachers. You saw just a few of them today, as well as by our school administrators and by the district team. Their investment today will be worth untold dividends in the future. And I am so grateful for being able to be a part of it and share their work with you. Thank you, and happy holidays, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Creekard. We now move to our first set of public comments. Sandra, do I have all the cards? All right, this is a call for public comment for non-agenda items, items not listed on the agenda, and consent agenda items. These may be brought to the governing board's attention under this section of the agenda, and due to open meeting law, the governing board cannot discuss or take action on any items not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, and one person cannot give his or her time to another. To increase the number of minutes an individual may speak. For items listed on the agenda as information and discussion items or action items, the public will be afforded an opportunity to comment on those items as they come up. Our first speaker is Chris Ambry.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Chris Ambry, and I am the proud president of the Scottsdale Education Association, although in all honesty, I'm feeling a bit more like the Lorax. I speak for the teachers. When I stand here, it is to share with you all the voices I hear daily from across the district. Today, I'd like to share with you some feedback from the recent 301 plan vote. Just as all teachers do, if I see that the results of a lesson were not what I expected, I assume the fault is mine and proceed to reevaluate my methods. Given SEA involvement, the results of the vote were not what I expected. So our executive board gathered comments, observations, and reactions from teachers on every campus at our monthly site representatives meeting. When asked, why did teachers vote against this plan? The overwhelming response was, we don't trust the district. More on this later. It was reported that principals across the district shared details, when they did share details, of the plan in starkly varied ways. As we heard specific reasons for a negative vote, many were based on different misconceptions that were provided at each site. There was not enough time for them to speak with their SEA representative before a vote was required, as this process felt very rushed. SEA asked to be a part of the plan rollout, but we were not included. This is in no way meant to be taken as a negative about our wonderful, amazing principals, but simply a reflection of the communication deficits that we still endure. As the leader of our association, I listened to what everyone had to say, really hearing what they said. Then I asked a question that I felt needed to be answered. Why, if SEA supported this plan, did so many vote against it? Are we not the voice of the teachers? Have we lost this trust too? This is when I learned of the lingering, deep distrust of the district. Here is what was said. It is understood that SEA does not have any real voice or power in this district. Therefore, it was assumed that this was a district push with committee members not able to have a plan they would have preferred. So here we are, again. Bottom line, the vote is an absolute reflection of the district managing certified staff instead of working collaboratively alongside them on issues directly related to their fellow professionals. One final, very important question was asked. What would it take for you to trust the district? The answer was unified. When SEA has full rights restored, so we know that we are all seen as valuable professionals, with the district recognizing SEA as the true voice of the teachers. I speak for the teachers, so I have to say this. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, no more cards. We move now to our information and discussion items. 7A, the first read of proposed revisions to policies INJDB, use of technology resources in instruction, and JICH, drug and alcohol use by students. Ms. Marshall.
There we go. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Krikard and Sandra. I am bringing to you two policies for a first read tonight. The first I've put up here is policy IJNDB, which is called Use of Technology Resources in Instruction. And in speaking with our Chief Technology Officer, she noted that we needed to get this one updated to add reference to the Children Internet Protection Act, which this does do. In addition, so you'll see here the Children's Internet Protection Act references here. It also discusses, notification to parents. So these terms include education, supervision, and monitoring. Just states what we already do to protect students and minors from predators on the internet. And there is a parent notification there, that we notify parents of the policies regarding the use of technology and the internet while at school, and of their ability to prohibit their students from getting on our internet at school if they so wish. So that is the proposed update to this policy. Are there any questions, discussion about that?
Any questions from board members? Board Member Beckham?
Thank you for bringing this an information item, and it appears that really it's an amendment with additions, as I see,
Right.
with just that one legal part put out. So I would just say before we bring it back for approval that we meet with the teachers and we meet with principals to make sure that they're aware of it and if they have any questions, especially after Ms. Ambray's discussion. I'd like to make sure the teachers
Absolutely.
are well informed and ask their opinion.
I do know that that teachers do teach. They have a standard to teach students about citizenry online, and I believe we do notifications in the code of conduct as well as the technology use guidelines. So it's my understanding that our staff is very aware, but absolutely we will discuss it and put it in all 3 of our employee newsletters before we bring it back. Thank you for that. Sorry. Yes. You can actually talk if you like. Our Chief Technology Officer, who knows way more about this than I do, just wants to make sure you know something else.
Thank you,
We
Ms.
also put
Spalding.
together a Moodle that all employees are required to take about digital citizenship and SEPA compliance and FERPA compliance and all those fun things. So they're very educated every year.
Thank you for that reminder.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members?
Okay, I will pull up the second policy we have for a first read tonight, which is policy JICH, drug and alcohol use by students. Again, this policy has not been updated previously by the governing board, so it was one of the original policies adopted with the entire policy manual. I provided you with this red line prior to this evening, as well as a little explanation. This essentially updates the policy to reference some of the newer issues that we've been dealing with, including reference to vaping, synthetic and counterfeit drugs, imitation drugs. We still consequence students for possession and distribution of such items, as well as an update to reflect the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act. And the Medical Marijuana Act in Arizona essentially states that employers can't discriminate against employees just for having a medical marijuana card. So this language is similar for students. We can't take a student to task for being a card-carrying person with a medical marijuana. It's not a prescription, but with a card from DHS. We can and do still consequence for possession on campus, use on campus, distribution, and all of the normal consequences you would expect from drugs that are still generally illegal federally. Even though they are legal in the state, they're not allowed to be on campus. Are there any questions or comments about this one?
Board Member Greenberg?
Sorry, just in the very first paragraph, students on school property or at school events shall not knowingly breathe, inhale, or drink a vapor-releasing substance containing a toxic substance. I mean, I think the general overall thing is they can't vape, but a toxic substance, I've read the reports, I understand it, but
Right.
is the toxic substance a necessary?
That's a good question. Of course, this is Arizona School Boards Association recommended
Right.
language. I can go back and look at it. I know that with vapes, they can contain all kinds
Right.
of different substances, and vaping in general is prohibited
Right.
and can be consequenced, whether it's nicotine, something else, marijuana, and they all can be harmful to kids' lungs, as we've seen in the news.
Yeah, of course.
Toxic, I'm not so sure
Yeah.
about why they use that particular word.
It would just be interesting to, again, as I say, it's very
Right.
clear that vaping is not permitted on our school campuses. It's just that, just at first glance, I just saw toxic substance and I thought, well.
I'll look at
Yeah.
why they use that
Yeah.
and bring that
They
information
might have a very
back.
good reason for it. I just don't know. Thank you.
Sure.
Board Member Beckham.
I'll follow up because I had that same question, because what happens if they're vaping and it is not a toxic substance? What happens if it is just sugar water, if you will, because they're having fun vaping? So we need to make sure that.
In general, any vaping is consequence, regardless of what's in it.
Right.
So it's still a disciplinary action in terms of determining whether something's toxic. You know, we have SROs who help us determine whether it's an illegal drug. I don't know about determining that something is toxic.
Right. And I get it, it's under drug and alcohol, which is
Yeah.
why it's probably toxic, but to the point, where is it stated then that all vaping, no matter what the substance is prohibited?
And
Where is
my
that stated?
expert code of conduct assistant soup is not here tonight.
Oh.
I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I can find it before I bring it back to you.
Okay, great, okay, just so that we can
Sure.
report out so people know in both places that it
Yes.
might be.
Board Member Greenberg.
Sorry, I would just note there, I think originally there was a specific definition for toxic substance, but from statute, but we've removed it. So that's my point, is I don't know if it's still being, it was specifically said, defined by statute.
Right.
So I just don't know if that statute's now gone, or if the ASBA just has a specific, not to be in the weeds, but I just don't want somebody to come back and say exactly what, well, it's just water and blah, blah, blah. And you know,
Right.
the point is we're trying to tell you, don't pick up the habit
Right.
if you can avoid it, for the obvious, unfortunate medical cases we've seen across the country.
Board Member Beckham.
So the other question I have is on the medical marijuana, because this is the question that's going to come up.
Yes.
So my student has medical marijuana card. They do not actually use marijuana during the school day on property, but they do come to school and they're under the influence. What is the policy there?
A student can be consequenced for being under the influence at school. Certainly, if there is a medical condition, we're talking to the family about what that is, but they are not permitted to be at school under the influence of an illegal drug. So they would be consequenced for that.
And then, is there anything that, if you are a medical marijuana card holder, does the student or the parent, if it is a minor, have to report that to the district at the first of the year?
No, they're not required to notify us that they have that status.
Any further questions? Board Member Kravitz?
Oh, I just wanted clarification. So if we have a student who is undergoing chemotherapy and they have a medical marijuana card and maybe they've ingested a substance containing marijuana, they then can't come to school?
No. So for a student with a chronic illness like that, we're often having conversations up front about how can we accommodate the student? Do they need homebound services for instruction to happen at home? What is their ability to come to school? How can we help them come to school? So no, when there's a medical condition, there's all kinds of conversations happening before that occurs. So it's really, in my mind, kind of a different category.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? No? Okay.
Okay, I will come back with the information requested. And is this action when it returns or consent?
I think it's action.
You want action so you can talk
Yeah.
about it? Okay.
Okay.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Marshall. Okay, we move now to our next public comment, but I don't believe we have any cards for discussion items. Do we, Sandra? No? Okay. Now to our consent agenda. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. The consent agenda is approved. Okay, we would move now to our final public comment on our action items, and I don't believe we have any cards at this time either. So we will go to our first action item, which is 11A, approval of the quarterly expectations and priorities for the superintendent for the third quarter of 2019-2020. Dr. Creekard, did you want to start?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
President Beckman, members of the board. So first of all, reviewing very briefly the 4 quarterly priorities for this past quarter. The first was the continuation of the program facility plans for each learning community, which were the excess capacity reports that we completed in November. So that one was completed. You have had that information for you. The second is a review of the administration evaluation process. That has not been completed. We are scheduled to have those meetings with you board members to go over those administrative evaluation processes in January. Dr. Bowman will be setting that up in January for you. And then the third is recommendations on the district's growth schools. And as you recall, in November, we brought to you the recommendation that Anasazi and Echo Canyon be taken off of the growth school list. Navajo be given a pass because of their situation with the fire, and that Yavapai is continuing to be monitored for growth. And fourthly, the recommendation on the district's internal auditing. So as you all know, we have had discussions this past month about that. I do not have a recommendation at this point. I have also talked to the city of Scottsdale, the city manager, about their system, and I will have further discussions with President Beckman about bringing whether or not to bring this item back to you on the agenda. So it was a priority for me this past quarter. We spent quite a bit of time talking about it, but have no conclusion yet or no recommendation to you at this point. But we will in the next quarter. So then looking at the my suggestions based on conversations that we have had and knowing the time of the year and what happens generally in the third quarter, so that we get it right. I have suggested just for discussion purposes, one, staffing for all schools be completed. That continues to be a major issue in terms of making sure that the school projections are accurate. The staffing that they need is provided. We have also talked about some budgetary considerations with that staffing. Secondly, budget meetings. I believe last year when we brought the completed budget to you, or during the budget process at any rate, it was suggested that we have more input to the budget, and so we have planned a couple of public meetings on the budget, and also there'll be more meetings with employee groups on budget and budget considerations that they would like to see. So that will be happening this next quarter. We had talked about looking at the Coronado learning community based on the excess capacities and making some recommendations to you. Honestly, after hearing from principals, after this was printed, we'd like to push that off probably till the fourth quarter for the new superintendent. We are talking about the deadline being the start of school in 2021 when Hohokam reopens anyway, so there's no immediate need to deal with that this spring, although we can deal with it, but I would like to see the new superintendent have input into that this spring, and so we're asking that we be allowed to push those facility meetings in the Coronado learning community off till April. Fourthly, I have put something that I've spent a lot of time on, and other staff members as well, but enhancing our ASU, CSI, and Charos partnerships. We have had, I believe, 3 meetings as a group with ASU regarding the CSI program, what they can do, as well as, and kind of, each meeting has two agenda items. One is CSI and the other is how we can get help with our social emotional learning initiatives. And so in terms of the CSI, we are looking at changing the impact of ASU's involvement from helping with structure of school to actually helping with the instruction that takes place on campus, the remediation, the resources they have for professional development for teachers. As we've talked before about the need for some basic teaching strategy and classroom management strategy help, especially at Coronado High School itself with a younger staff. And then the Charos, we've met with the Charos group several times, and they are interested in both of those initiatives, both the SEL and providing help for the Coronado complex as a whole. And so we hope to be finishing those partnership agreements up this quarter, and that's certainly been, even though it was not on the list in the third quarter, it dominated quite a bit of my time during that quarter. If we move the Coronado Learning Community Facility meetings to later in the spring, then I would recommend from earlier discussions that maybe we put in place the completion of the certified handbook as a priority for this quarter. So submitted.
Any questions from board members? Board Member Greenberg?
So regarding the updated goals, your point 3 about Coronado Learning Community Facility meetings, I recognize that is something you have had a lot of discussions on and have spent quite a bit of time on, but I think given the time frame now, I would agree with you that it is perhaps something better for the new superintendent and his or her team to take on, because hopefully we will be hiring somebody who will be here for a while and would implement a general plan overall once they have met with community members, taken in the input that you have and your team has already gathered, speaking to parents, students, teachers, principals, and then come up with a plan. That might make more sense rather than start down a path now that then gets rewritten in a year's time. So I can understand why you feel like that might be something to remove and replace, and I can understand that. Regarding the district's internal auditing, I am pretty disappointed on this issue because it is a priority, and it is a board policy. That there is a specific board policy directing the superintendent to do this. Now, your hands are tied if we don't give you the funding and approval to do it, but it concerns the process concerns me insofar as we've never actually had a specific time to discuss this issue. It's always been an ancillary point, either brought on in your priorities, I think almost only in your priorities, as something to be discussed, but the public does not actually know where each board member stands on these issues. I'm not sure I understand where all the board members stand on these issues.
And that's as it should be. That you not know where other board members stand.
Yes. Well, yes, that's true. But I just mean from the ancillary discussions we've had. That is correct. I don't know where. Yes, I have not spoken to the other board members about this, so I do not actually know. Neither does the public. So, my concern is that you have done all this work. we have not received a plan to approve or reject. And the public, it is great that we passed the M&O, but, one of the biggest criticisms we had was trust issues. The SEA, I think, recently came out in favor of, internal auditing controls. Recently, Scottsdale City Council had a whole article in the newspaper about their internal auditing and external auditing processes. It was a pretty flattering article, it seemed. And they, they don't agree on a whole lot of things, but they seem to be pretty unanimous on that. So I would really like to not take this off the priority list and add it and have it ongoing, because I'm afraid that this is just going to get swept under the rug, and then 5 years down the line, we're going to have the exact same issue. The same issues come up, maybe not with the superintendent, but somewhere these things, these issues come back. I mean, we did this in '99. We did this 3 years, for the past 3 years. So I'm really not supportive of removing that from, the key priorities. You've obviously done a lot of the work, so.
Yeah, there's no intention to take it off the list, but I'm reporting that it is not completed yet from last quarter. My intention is my staff will love this, but there's a little Excel spreadsheet I have of board requests to me and action taken and so forth. And I will tell you that internal auditor is there. It's the fourth one down, just under administrative evaluation system review. So it continues to be on my to-do list,
right,
and work on this. Yes.
But I guess my concern is that, from the statement that, it will be discussed in January, to ever put it on. I mean, it could just end January with absolutely no discussion whatsoever. And I know some of my colleagues don't care about that, but, despite what they might have said a year ago.
The genesis of the quarterly priorities were never to not have them. They're to have them roll forward if they don't get completed.
If they don't get, but that should then be a continuing, that's what I'm saying, it should still be the list.
Yeah.
I mean, in other words, the continuation of program facility plans, if we hadn't finished that, I would think that we would have continued that on this list, right? I mean, was that not right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, is that if the recommendation on the district's internal auditing, if our superintendent and staff have already put so much time into it, to then not present it to the public and to the governing board and avoid debate on the issue, I think deprives the public of its right to know where that issue stands, personally. I mean, I think the whole point of this is that we present things, we either all agree, we disagree, we reject, approve, we discuss with each other, we learn new things. But if we're not able to actually have that discussion on a pretty critical issue that has the majority of the public support, I would be, I just don't think we'd be doing our job, and I don't know how to hold us accountable if every single priority we give to Dr. Creekard, some we complete very well. We had a great work on the program facility plans, awesome work there. Administration evaluation process, just pointed out there's more work to be done, but we're making progress there. Recommendations on the district's growth, we had that. And then say with the recommendation on the district's internal auditing, while we've done a lot of work there and maybe we'll discuss it, I personally think that that's a significant mistake. That I'm putting that out there.
I never used the word maybe. I did not use the word maybe.
Well, you said if. I mean, if it's going to be on there, I mean, that's.
Well, it was my understanding that these things do roll forward, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't necessarily believe, and this was in one of our public regular meetings, that there was a disagreement on the value of having an audit in general. The discussion centered around whether it would be an internal auditor, and I'm not having this discussion right now, I'm just talking about rolling it forward with the recommendation. The discussion centered around whether the value would be in an internal auditor or an external auditor. And we asked Dr. Creekard and Mr. Gadd to get together and bring forth a recommendation based on our priority of where they thought, in their opinion, which would be the better one to bring forward. And I think they were working on that and are still coming to a conclusion. And if, in my understanding, Dr. Creekard is reaching out to some people in the community to ask a little bit more about that. And am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I appreciate that, but what was specifically conveyed to me in writing and just now was, if it's going to come up, it will come up in January, right? So, or February, whatever. So if is a significant issue to me, because I don't think that people.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand how you feel about this. I'm careful not to waste the board's time or the community's time if I feel that our recommendation is going to come forward and everybody just says, no, we don't agree with that, we're going, then why would I bring it up and waste everybody's time, I guess is what I'm saying. So right now, Mr. Gadd and I have had a number of discussions. I don't know that we are of one mind on exactly what we're looking at. And I've had conversations with each of the board members. So what I would just ask your forbearance on is that the board president and I get a chance to sit down and talk about where I think we are and putting it on the agenda. And I only say if is because I don't know what the result of that discussion would be. If that discussion, if the board president says to me after a long discussion, I don't think we should bother putting it on, then if I guaranteed to you that I was going to put it on and I don't have her approval, then that's disingenuous. And so that's the only reason why I was trying to be careful with my language.
That I can accept that point, but I do think that then I would caution both of you then that by telling me that you have spoken to the board. Now you and I did not speak about it. In passing very briefly, but so I don't know what the extent of the discussions with other board members has been, but what I will say is, if you're telling me that you don't want to, generally speaking, you don't want to bring things that will waste the public's time or waste our time, I appreciate that. That makes me concerned that the public is then being clearly deprived of the information contained in those discussions, as am I, because I do not know where I stand with my colleagues on this issue, which is supported by the vast majority of the public. So that's going to be that's my caution on this issue. If we are to remove it,
I accept that point.
I was just going to say, how do you know it's supported by the vast majority of the public? Have you surveyed the whole? You haven't surveyed everybody.
I believe you actually supported it last year in June, so a lot of people supported it.
Support an internal auditor?
Yeah, I can read your comments if you'd like.
So,
no.
Yeah, well, let's get back
to I just was wondering how you...
Okay. So the priorities, let's talk about the priorities for a second. I will make a commitment that Dr. Creekard and I will sit down and discuss this in January. And it will stay on the priority list, and we will bring something forward that we discuss. Okay? Great, thanks. Any further discussion or comments? Board Member Beckham.
Yes, along those same lines, I feel the same way, for basically the same reasons regarding the Coronado learning community. I feel that it is going to take a lot of work, and I feel that those discussions need to start now. We don't need to wait till we have a new superintendent who's going to be coming in and having so much to learn. And that is not one of the probably, black and white bits of data that is just going to pop out and be easy to understand. So I think that is also something that we need to continue in January, getting the data that we need to, having the discussions that we need to, and communicating out what we're finding, so that come April, it doesn't get done. I would agree. So I feel the same way on that subject.
Okay, Board Member Greenberg.
I would, insofar as that, what you've just, I would agree with that position, that the data and the information and those discussions should still be ongoing, so that whoever when that transition takes place, they have that. They have a big starting off point. So I understand that.
And I guess my point would be doing it in April in preparation of a July 1 start of the new superintendent would give us time. Otherwise, what I'm looking at is right now 6 priorities plus whatever else comes to me by way of email and phone conversations. Might not be exactly why we put this particular mechanism in the contract.
Well, I can, just to think this through a little bit, if we were to have those meetings in the Coronado Complex in April, if all goes well, we would have hired and we will have a new superintendent, and there may be value in having that superintendent attend the meetings, the community meetings. I mean, we obviously want to involve the stakeholders. We want the new superintendent to start off on hearing the stakeholders and what they want going forward. It's going to be a significant discussion. So, April, you don't want to go too far out, but April might not be a bad idea.
I guess what I'm speaking of is data. I mean, we've got to look at and pull together, all the costs of every school. We've got to get the management of the schools. We've got to, there's more to it than just having community meetings. And so I guess I'm looking at more of the hard data that needs to be pulled together.
We can certainly do that.
Yeah.
We can pull the data, the background data, because much of that we have on hand.
Board Member Kravitz, did you have something?
We
I was
should
just
have
gonna
it
say
all on hand.
That makes
and if
sense,
we
so that
don't,
we
I know
have
we have it.
all the background information ready to roll for when we do have community meetings in April. I can go forward.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to do. So it's my understanding, and please correct me if you heard something that I did not hear, that we understood what the previous quarterly priorities were, and that all of them, for the most part, were completed except for number 4, which is a recommendation of the district's internal auditing, which will be discussed in January. It rolls forward, and that will be discussed in January of 2020 to be put on an agenda. The next quarterly meetings that are new, recommendation would be staffing for our schools, budget meetings. The Coronado Learning Community Facility meetings data background begin, but the actual community meetings begun in April, and completion of a certified handbook, correct? Did you say
And
you
the
wanted to add
enhancing
that?
the ASU CSI Charles
And
Partnership.
enhancing the ASU CSI
Right, so
Charles
5,
Partnership.
you're saying 5, okay.
So 5.
5 plus 1 in January.
Board Member
Right.
Beckham.
I think I would take off the last one. I think that maybe if you're having those meetings, that's great, but I don't know that I would put it as a priority. And under budget meetings, I don't want it to be just the budget meetings that we've had. I really am looking for putting together and thinking about, what are, of all the information that we got from the teachers, the principals, the community, the parents, possibly the students, what their priorities are, that we actually put together a strategic plan of what those priorities are. How can we pay for them given our budget? And hopefully what we're going to be, focusing on is academic growth and those outcomes. And so that you're going to look at those priorities and you're going to say, hey, does this priority actually, enhance the student's experience at school, and does it help with academic outcomes? And if it doesn't, maybe that isn't a priority. But here's one that is, and how much money is that going to be? And then we have to do a strategic plan. Is it going to be just a one-year program, or is that an ongoing program? And do we have the sustainability of those funds? So I'm really looking for that strategic financial plan on providing more priorities and programs in the district.
Okay. Board Member Greenberg, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that. that those are key priorities for the district. And I mean, the strategic planning is, the big thing I brought up for the superintendent search and everything. I think it's really smart to start gathering the data, and I know we have a lot of it already that we've collected, throughout various reports and that, but really start getting that data. My only concern is, broadly speaking, starting to create plans when we're going to have a change in leadership, like the actual plans. That's the one step I would be hesitant to push for. Everything else, all the data gathering, putting in the plans of additional data we need, where our gaps are, all that, anecdotal meetings, surveys, all these things, completely support. Whenever it gets into planning, it's just because we're having a leadership change. I don't know if that's something we really want to start concretely building. And maybe that's not what you meant, but that's just, yeah.
Okay. Board Member Beckham.
Okay, thank you. So what has transpired is coming into the district and wanting to be able to say, hey, what can we do with our budget, and being told every year, nope, the budget is what we have declining enrollment, we don't have the funds, we can't do anything new because we can't make it sustainable. And I'm not trying to make light of it in my tone, and I think it's coming off that way, and I don't mean that way, so I apologize. But it's just a frustrating point for me. We have additional funds in our budget to do some exciting things, hopefully, maybe some innovations, maybe some programs, hire some additional, hopefully, positions. And that actually has to be done in this first quarter. We've got to figure it out. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. And the reason it does is because we put together the budget, and it then has to go through, I don't know, the regulations say we have to have so many committee meetings once we get it done and meet these requirements, and then it's in June. So really, we come up with a proposed budget by March. Is that correct? Yes. Right. So that's the planning I'm talking about. What I don't want to hear again is, oh, well, we can't do it because we're having a change of leadership. It's been 3 years I've been on this board, and our students have not been able to have any additional priorities set within the budget. There's been a few, I take that back, a few, but not any major ones, and we do have additional cash in which to do that. So I don't want to all of a sudden get to March and say, oh, well, we didn't plan well enough, so we have to put that off for another year. It is December. This is perfectly doable. And so that's what I'm talking about.
I do believe our very last meeting, or our very last budget meeting, I do recall you, Mr. Gadd, and I'm not putting you on the spot, that you said you were going to discuss some uses for instance, the cash reserve funds, et cetera, and some things that you were going to present to us, correct? Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I know.
We need to have the teachers' input, the community's input before the 21st, and I believe our first meeting is January 30th. Is that correct for the community? So even though Mr. Gadd can present some ideas, that we're going to have those community meetings afterwards, so there's going to have to be that work once we get that input to figure out if it's doable.
Yes.
Okay, otherwise it looks just like
but we do need to hear from him so we can
decided.
Start with what we actually have available, right? Okay, yeah. Board Member Greenberg?
Yes, I appreciate that clarification,
Yeah.
just because I didn't want it to make it sound, it's just the way I interpret it was, we're going to come up with some, 3 to 5 year plan of spending and everything. It's like, well, our priorities, the leadership, so that I appreciate that. And I would agree, I'm there are things that I'm hopeful for that you have spoken about in the past and everything. So maybe if we make it budget meetings and budget strategy, or expenditure strategy, would that be an appropriate amendment for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, do we have all of it? As far as do I need to repeat it, or we're just going to modify budget meetings to include budget strategy meeting as well?
Meetings and strategies. Okay.
Meetings and strategies and recommendations, yes. Okay, are we good? Okay, is there any further discussion then on action item 11A, the approval of the quarterly expectations and priorities for the superintendent for the third quarter of 2019-2020? No? Board Member Greenberg, do you have something?
Could you read the list of the priorities, just the final versions that were?
Okay, yes.
Sorry, I apologize.
See what I have?
Yes.
Yeah,
Why
okay.
doesn't Dr. Creekard do it? So he's in agreement with us.
Number 1, staffing for all schools. Number 2, budget meetings and strategies. Number 3, I still have enhance ASU CSI Charles partnerships. And number 4, completion of certified handbook. And then we also have said that the discussion of the internal auditor will take place in January.
And my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we'd start to gather the data for
Data,
the
okay.
Coronado Learning Community
All right.
meetings.
Oh, so that would be number 3 as it was, and enhance would be 4. So background data collected for facility meetings.
Correct. Okay. All right, we good? Any more questions? Okay. Then I move to approve the quarterly expectations and priorities for the superintendent for the third quarter of 2019-2020. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Moving on to our action item 11B, approval of revisions to policies CFD, school-based management, school councils, and JLCD, administering medicines to students. Ms. Marshall.
Thank you. So for action items on policies this evening, I have 2 policies that administration has done a lot of work on since we last spoke with you. The first one is policy CFD, called school-based management, or school councils, or as we know them, site councils. We brought this to you for a first read back in April, at the April 1st, 2019 meeting. Since that time, we've had lots of good discussion and meetings. We've had 4 or more meetings with principals and assistant principals. We've had 2 or 3 meetings with parents, primarily the Scottsdale Parent Council group, including an October 22nd meeting where they invited parents to come and talk, and appreciate that some of you were there, and principals came to that as well. And we also have had some discussion in cabinet about how this works. So we've had lots of good discussion, lots of feedback, continuing discussions with our principals and parents in terms of implementing certain changes to site council. For the policy, I did a check to make sure that everyone that we had discussions with was okay with us going forward with the policy discussion, presenting this part to the board, but know that we are continuing to have discussions about things like helping sites with model policies, talking about agenda templates, helping people comply with open meeting law, and principals are sharing ideas through Google Docs as well. So with that, what we've added since the last time we were here in April is we learned that most of our site councils are doing tax credit approval, which is allowed for in statute with respect to those tax credit contributions that have been undesignated. Site council is supposed to determine how those funds will be used, and a lot of our sites, site councils are already doing that, and it's permitted in statute. It wasn't in our policy, so we added that under the delegation of authority. Then we came to this discussion with parents and with sites as to what is kind of a catch-all that would allow flexibility site by site to address issues that are important locally, but still have enough of a guideline to explain to parents what they could discuss in site council and recommend in site council. And so we discussed adding reference to the school's continuous improvement plan. We shared, Dr. Sakos came with me to the Scottsdale Parent Council meeting, and we shared with the parents what normally goes into a site improvement plan, school improvement plan, and we had discussion about that. Again, checked with our principals quite a few times, does this work for you? We got thumbs up all around. Also checked back with Scottsdale Parent Council, thumbs up as to adding this continuous improvement plan as a category for site council to discuss and to support the local community. One other item that we discussed quite a few times with our principals was this section here on membership. Which categories of people are supposed to make up the site council? We heard from a number of schools that getting that community member can be difficult. It's easier at some schools than others. And so in that discussion, we agreed that we would recommend one community member regardless of grade level, as opposed to the original recommendation, which was to have 2 community members if it was other than a high school, 1 at high school. So the current proposal is 1 community member, at least 1 community member. The statute requires equal number of teachers and parents on the council, and then requires the other items of membership that are there and that we've discussed before. So that is an overview of the changes we're proposing for your approval tonight with respect to the site council policy. I will take any discussion or questions you might have.
Any questions from board members? Board Member Beckham.
Thank you for putting this together. I know this is a subject that is much more complex than it appears. I support the revisions. I think that they need to be added because we've talked to the principals and they just need to be added to be able to have it be more functional as well as clarification. I am not opposed to supporting this tonight. However, then I still believe it needs some revisions. So I don't know if my board members would prefer tabling it so we can look at those revisions that I am going to talk about in a minute, or if we go ahead and we approve this tonight and then we look at the revisions. But I think that there is some there is some clarification that needs to take place. And earlier this afternoon, Dr. Creekard and I were having a discussion, and the discussion was on decentralization versus whether it was more about community input and having more of site-based decision-making. And this statute was, for background, statute was from 1994 approximately, and SUSD actually was involved in putting it together. But it's broad enough that you have some leeway in how you look at decentralization and the site-based management. And you had mentioned that there is less of an emphasis on decentralization. Is that correct?
Yes, I said there's less of an emphasis now nationally on decentralization than there was in the early 90s when that was a trend.
And that's the one thing I wanted to talk to as a board, because this comes from us as a board of what we are thinking about. And in the very first paragraph, it states that the purpose of this is to accomplish decentralization. So if the trend is, and if this board decides that that it's really not decentralization that we're looking for, then I think we may want to change that first paragraph. So I just really, I get the impression that we're not quite sure, and I would say as a board, because I'm not, what exactly is the purpose of our site councils. And I want to be very clear in a opening paragraph of what that is.
I'm sorry, are you talking about the opening paragraph of the policy, or are you talking about the first paragraph of the statute?
CFD, right here. The governing board may delegate to a school council the responsibility to develop a curriculum and may delegate any additional powers that are reasonably necessary to accomplish decentralization.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I just think there needs to be some board discussion of what we want these school councils to actually be doing. Is it just so that the communities, parents, and teachers have input into what areas in the school, or is it to really look at what is decentralization and what does it mean in that first paragraph so that we're not confusing our school administrators.
Board Member Greenberg.
So if
I can scroll up to that.
if I understand correctly, we are required to have site-based councils.
That's correct.
But what we allow them to do is up to us.
That's correct.
The idea being that at a minimum, the committee has some input or has the right to share their views on what's being done at the school. So it could be as much as a simple, just correct me if I'm wrong, it could be at its most limited, just a group of community members selected in accordance with statute to provide feedback. And on its maximum, it could be making curriculum decisions and that type of. Is that a fair, or am I way off?
That's correct.
Well.
Sorry, that's
not-
correct under the
no,
statute.
Not curriculum, but maybe instructional.
Instructional.
Instructional strategies.
Instructional strategies.
Right.
So
Not curriculum itself.
The statute actually allows, it's a may. A board may delegate
curriculum. So, which I don't think would be smart, probably. I don't
That
think.
is the
but-
consensus
yeah,
of
that
those
is the
who are
consensus.
experts at curriculum.
But, so the question you're asking is, actually, what is it that we want them, what purpose to, rather than saying, well, they have all these powers and stuff, is it better to say that, that they can't do this? This is what we're trying to get out of this. I think that's a fair question because I've not been on a site council. I don't know if any of you have or if anyone. I think I think the integral aspect, the feedback, is probably the most important that these individuals have a say. Insofar as making a lot of decisions outside of that, having the power to make those decisions, I'm not sure I would agree. Like, I wouldn't want to give the curriculum power.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
my point. If
Yeah.
you read that first paragraph, it's very confusing.
Board Member Kravitz.
And at what point does the board actually give?
Okay.
Because it's a may.
Well,
At what point do we actually say what?
that first paragraph is, as I think was alluded, is taken directly from the ARSs, and those
That
are
is-
written broadly because we have some very small districts, and the site council may, so are we better off just cutting the first paragraph and starting with the board authorizes the establishment of a school council at each school and follow the regulations? That is basically the authority we're giving the site council, starting with that paragraph.
Here it comes. So we say that to follow regulations, right now, we don't have, what are the regulations that are promulgated by the board? Where are they? Where are they to be found?
Well, to me, I interpret a regulation as policy promulgated.
But we haven't done that. So.
Well, any
that's
policy
why
that
those
is part
first
of
two
our
paragraphs, I
board.
think, provide confusion, and they don't provide the direction that we're looking for, just as you have stated.
So, first of all, I haven't talked to any staff member who would recommend delegating curriculum development. Secondly, Board Member Kravitz is right. That first paragraph is directly out of ARS 15351B. It is verbatim, the first sentence of that. Subsection A to that statute states that the purpose of the section is to ensure that individuals who are affected by the outcome of a decision at the school site share in the decision-making process. That is not something that's in the policy or was recommended as language. I offer that as an alternative language that's in the statute that talks about what the purpose is, and takes us away from that decentralization concept that was popular in the 90s but not necessarily a focus today. That is a possible substitute here, or some version of that. I will say that I agree that we definitely had parents at our SPC meeting who were kind of like, what is site council and what does it do and what should it do? And I've heard that from the SPC representatives. There's confusion about why does this school get to do a certain thing and another school doesn't get to. And as I explained to the representatives from SBC at that time, it isn't that people get to, it's what the local school has kind of developed with their community. We want to give them the ability to do what's useful and helpful to their local community, and still ensure that there's no mistake about what the principal's role is in running the school, or the assistant principals in assisting in that. I don't know if that solves any problems tonight, or if you would like us to go back to the drawing board.
Board Member Greenberg, you had a comment.
Yeah, so there are two things I want to build on that. The first paragraph is verbatim, but it skips that first
Right.
sentence, but which says what we actually have to do, and then
Right.
The other point is, so read as a whole, there are these three things that we're allowing them to provide input, determine how tax credit contributions, and then provide input. I mean, those are their delegated powers. And I think this goes actually back to a number of discussions we've had about the policies we've enacted or want to enact, or the edits. And that is, these aren't statutes in which they're like formally numbered, paragraphs, every single thing we write. But generally speaking, I mean, people understand that they need to read the policy as a whole. And, the first paragraph is, I was thinking about a little bit of a different issue. The first paragraph is confusing if you only read that paragraph and don't read anything else. And I don't think, I think, or I hope that, our students and our principals and teachers and our parents are well educated. They're smart enough. They can read this and understand what it is they're doing. I think what Michelle has pointed out is actually probably more of the problem, is not the policy issue, but this misconception that some schools are allowed to do things that other schools are not allowed to do things. And that's probably more of just an educational thing, because in large part, this is almost the entirety of it could basically be taken from the statute. I mean, it says, this is a statute to try and help allow stakeholders to provide input to their community that affect them. B, we have to form this, and this is what you may do. C, who gets to be on the site council, and these are the different. So I think it's if our legislature wrote it, we were able to interpret it as this. I think looking at the specific authorizations we've given, I'm fine with those. I think those are the appropriate limits that I'm comfortable with, and it seems that our principals and a lot of our parents and administration are comfortable with. So I think to your question about are we giving them the power or not giving the powers that they need, I think we're giving them the appropriate ones, personally. Those three, and maybe we just, I don't know if people have other ideas. And then the first paragraph, I mean, we could amend to include that first little bit from the statute of, that we shall or must form this, but that they only may or whatever. But I think if you read at least the first two paragraphs of the 3 bullet points, you quickly see what your remit is. So I don't think we need to spend much more time beyond this nitpicking that. That would be my position on that.
I would also add, and I alluded to this, but maybe didn't make it very clear in my memo, and I did in my response to you this afternoon. We are still having discussions with the parent group, and in discussing, hey, are we ready to bring this back for board approval? It was very clear, principals and parents, that we need to continue having a discussion about putting together a guideline for schools to follow, and that includes having these discussions about what's a good model policy, set of policies for every site council to have. What should be in your agenda? What's a good set of things to share at your first meeting of the year so that people understand where you are? And definitely communication to our communities about what is this all about is clearly needed. Those aren't things that necessarily belong in a policy, But certainly, it's recognized all around, administration, parents, community, that we need to do more work to have more discussions about that.
I agree completely on that. And I agree with both of you, especially your point about reading that first paragraph would think it wouldn't be defined enough at all, but reading, all of it, and we would trust that they would do that in its entirety, but the communication piece definitely is critical. Board Member Beckham.
I just wanted to say, actually, it was what I was going to say. I was going to say thank you for pointing that out, because I sometimes get caught up in individual things. And so I think you're absolutely right that reading it as a whole. But I think my concern is, too, has been on site council and trying to work with it for many, many years, is that it's that piece that this in itself, you're right, will not change how the site councils, whether they're effective or successful or not. And that's where we have fallen in the past. And that they have all been so different, not because of their communities, just because whether they have, what they've allowed to be spoken, or what subjects have been able to be talked about at the meetings as well. So I am wondering if, just by adding into the policy, that a guideline will be. I'm just fearful that that will get lost in everything else that has to be done in this district. And I think these site councils are just so important. They give the teachers a voice, they give the parents a voice, and the community a voice. And so maybe if we could put a blurb in there about that a guideline will be devised or, or developed so that we'll have something and it will have to be done.
So what I don't know standing here is whether there is a model regulation with this. We do not have one. Certainly, if we're going to continue to do this work, we could look at adding a regulation that sets forth more of that detail that you're talking about. As it stands, it says promulgated by the board, as you pointed out. That certainly is something you can delegate to the superintendent or his designee. But to say in a policy, these guidelines will be developed, it doesn't kind of fit in the policy language. I see what you're trying to achieve, but it wouldn't fit really in the language of the policy. What we can do is bring back a proposed regulation after having many more discussions. I'm only a little hesitant to promise a time because it has taken some time to have these really great discussions, but it's just taken some time. So I don't know how quickly we could turn that around, but we could certainly we're already committed to continuing the discussion, to bringing back a regulation, a proposed regulation to this.
I think that would be a great idea to have the regulation.
Okay.
So thank you.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? Okay, so all right, do I have a motion to approve action item 11B?
Can I?
Or we're tabling.
So there's a second policy.
Oh, there is. I'm sorry.
And it's all one item. You can certainly break it up if you prefer.
No.
Okay, if there's no more questions or discussion on that, I'll do the next one and then we can figure it out from there. So the next policy I'm going to pull up for you here is policy JLCD, which is administering medicines to students. You will recall that we brought this policy to you. I'm looking for the date. Previously. For discussion several months ago. Sorry, I don't have the date handy. June 11th. Practically the end of the school year. That's why I couldn't remember. Again, a lot of really good discussion with this one. If you'll recall, we brought this to you for a first read back last June to add, to codify that we can use EpiPens, rescue inhalers, and naloxone, an emergency anti-opioid, in the schools when necessary. We had some preliminary discussions with our nurses before we brought this to you for a first read, but we've had lots more discussion. There's been training that our nurses have done on in-service. We've received a standing order for administration of naloxone. So we're a lot farther down the path. We're still working on some donation components. We do not currently have EpiPens in our schools, and I believe we also do not have rescue inhalers except for those that students bring for themselves. But we are much farther along. We didn't make any changes to the language proposed for the policy from the last time, but we're just in a much more ready-to-go place at this point. So with that general summary, I'll take any questions or discussion if you would like.
Any questions from board members? No? Okay. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Or Ms. Marshall. All right. Now, do I have a motion to approve action item 11B, the revisions to policies CFD, school-based management, school councils, and JLCD, administering medicines to students?
So moved.
Board Member Greenberg makes the motion. Do I have a second? Are we modifying that? No. Right.
Second.
Board Member Beckham seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Moving on to future items, do I have any requests for future items? Board Member Greenberg?
Just kind of building off some of the discussions we've been having, with the issuing of the contracts for administrators and everyone, could we have a discussion about, I guess, how those are formed and written and what we can and can't do with the leadership change? Like, you know, if we're, since we hire for the next year and the contracts go out earlier than that, they go out in March usually. But we have a new superintendent coming in. I don't know how the contracts work. I don't know if we can have a discussion about that at some point beforehand about whether people can be moved around, you know, into different positions or things like that. I just don't know. So I wasn't sure if we could have a discussion basically about the restrictions of what the new superintendent, the flexibility the new superintendent is afforded based on the contracts and the language contained therein.
Okay. We can put that on there and discuss
that's what I'm
it.
asking for future agenda
Yeah.
items. That's what I'm saying. I think that's an appropriate request.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, next, dates of upcoming meetings. The next ones are Tuesday, January 7th, 2020 at 5 p.m., a special board meeting at the MDA, and Tuesday, January 21st, 2020, 5 p.m., a regular governing board meeting at Coronado High School. Do I have any governing board reports? No? Okay, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board Member Kravitz seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Meeting is adjourned at 6:56 p.m.